Hi, we're Carolyn and Angela, and we own Life's a Feast.
It's not just our company name, but it's our philosophy, because we truly believe life is a feast.
We didn't want to create a reality show, we wanted to create a real show.
So we're going to be talking to people who live this philosophy.
We're going to introduce you to places and tastes and experiences that you never even knew existed.
There's a feast around every corner.
So join us
And bring your appetite. We are here with Chris Happ Olson, the Executive Director of the Four Mounds Foundation. Thank you so much for joining
Well,
us.
thank you for coming.
Oh, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about what the Four Mounds Foundation is.
Okay, well, we're a nonprofit organization, but we're focused around the Four Mounds Estate. The Four Mounds Estate is a gentleman's farm that was developed back in 1908 by George and Viola Burden as their home. And it came out of a time when people were creating these gentlemen's farms sort of in reaction to the Industrial Revolution and what was happening in cities. It's an idyllic place where they produced fruit and vegetables, dairy products, all sorts of things to be able to feed the people that worked and lived here, but they didn't sell it for profit.
Wow. So it sounds like a gentleman's farm is a sustainable farm.
It is. It is.
So they were hit before sustainability was even a key word. So what?
Food's always been a big part of what we do.
This is why we love Four Mounds.
So in 1982, the city actually picked up the land and then donated it back to Four Mounds Foundation, or?
It was actually the Burden family donated it to the city, and we came along by 1987 during kind of an economic crisis in
Yeah.
Dubuque, and we created this foundation that took the burden off the city's back. So
Wonderful. And did you start from the beginning to like restore it? Was there an
That
immense
was-
amount of work that had to be done in the,
that
in
there's
the 80s?
17 buildings and 60 acres, and that was our first job.
Wow.
So we started involving youth very early on in the process. We knew that it could be a great opportunity for them to learn.
So youth of all ages, or certain high school programs, or do you tie in with, let's say, Hillcrest, or?
We have youth from all different ages that we work with, both recreationally and vocationally. It's
fantastic.
evolved over time, but every day throughout the school year.
Wonderful. That's such a wonderful thing to have, to actually tie the younger generation back into a historical property that's very, very important within history, but also within the history of Dubuque.
Well, it's just an inspiring place, and we've always worked very positively with young people and the people that come to visit Four Mounds. And we just believe that it energizes people, and it can be a great healing place.
Oh,
It really, the energy out here is really fantastic. It's really magical. You feel when you drive up, just in itself, you just take a fresh breath of air.
That is. So.
Pretty fantastic.
so speaking on the gentleman's farm terms and things like that, this ties into farm to table and what we do here in the garden, and then you also have a community garden that's on the other side of the property, correct?
Yeah, we have a community garden that we've had running since really about around 1990 or so. And family groups, church groups, we work with Hillcrest Family Services on a daily basis, where they use that food and take it back to the residences that serve the youth there.
Amazing.
We've had the Winter Farmers Market under our umbrella it's a very successful market here in Dubuque.
It's fantastic.
For about 7 years, I believe. And
Excellent.
so it's always, it's funny, our mission is preservation, education, and service, but food has always been a big part of what we do. So it
Ties
just made
right in.
sense for us. Yeah.
Well, and it works really beautifully because with that, preservation is reconnecting people to the source of food. So where does food come from?
Connecting them to place, you
Exactly.
know, and the local food movement does that. It connects you back to the land and the place.
It really does. And then ironically, when you have these organizations that are able to grow their own food and use it within to feed their residents, that also impacts them economically, which is huge for them. That takes a huge burden off of a food cost. So,
Well, especially the mission that benefits actually from farm to
Yeah,
table.
the farm to table dinner will benefit the Four Mounds Foundation with our kitchen garden that we have here that we use, as well as the Dubuque Rescue Mission's garden.
I heard about this great program here called Mound Bound.
Oh yeah, Mound Bound is fantastic. It's a healthy mind, healthy body experience for the kids that we work with. And they do gardening, cooking classes. They're out taking care of our chickens. It's a fantastic, great program.
Are they in the garden with?
Tracy.
Is she out there right now?
She is.
Well, then let's all go to the garden.
okay, so Tracy, you are out here in this gorgeous, gorgeous property of Four Mounds. What is it you do here?
Well, actually, I'm assistant innkeeper and new gardener. We're working on getting a gardening program here because this is the original kitchen garden, and gardening was very important to the family. And it's a bed and breakfast, so we like to use stuff for our guests. And it's just, I'm very privileged. You know, this garden spot was here over 100 years ago, and we're just really lucky that. And the dirt is beautiful here. This is Iowa.
We call this black gold.
as it is.
Right?
It
Black
is.
gold.
It
Black
definitely
gold.
is.
You know you're by the Mississippi when you've got black gold.
Oh yeah, and stuff just grows wonderful here.
So where did your passion for gardening come from?
When I was a kid, my parents had gardens. Even if we didn't live somewhere very long, a garden would go up and you'd see the great pepper plant. And even though we didn't get peppers, we went somewhere else and had gardens. So I've been gardening my whole life and really
What a great
enjoying it.
story. Really sowing the land as you go forth.
It was.
So
And even
it's in your blood.
though- It is. It is. I love it.
A birth gardener.
There you go. There you go.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing all of your stories with us and letting us know a little bit more about how things work at Four Mounds.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming.
Great. Okay, so we have returned from the beautiful gardens at Four Mounds, where we've gathered the produce that we need to help us prepare for the cocktail party, dinner party we're having later tonight. And we're going to be making two dishes for you. I'm going to be making a tomato and shallot tartare. Don't let the fancy word fool you. It's just a French word for tart. And Carolyn is going to be making a stuffed pork tenderloin for you. So Carolyn, why don't you start us off with the pork tenderloin?
Let's go do this. Love making pork tenderloin. It's quick, it's easy, and it's also low in fat. In order to make a pork tenderloin that's stuffed, you have to make 3 slices. You want to start bottom, make a 3/4 cut, kind of roll it out. Take this little piece, make another slice in the top here. So we make it so that it's nice and flat. And then we're going to take some plastic wrap, and this is the fun part of cooking actually. This is where you can really take out your anger. Some people like to use a meat pounder. I like to use a pan. Give it a couple good whacks. Get it down to about 1/4 of an inch actually. Take your plastic wrap off, and now let's start with our stuffing. First, we're gonna do some sauteed spinach. Well, actually no, we're gonna put some mustard in first to keep it moist. Nothing fancy about it, just get the mustard in there. Then comes the sauteed spinach. Don't saute your spinach too much. It'll get brown, and then as it cooks in the pork loin, what's gonna happen is it'll get a little bitter. And you don't want that, because you want it to be good. Chopped bacon, because pork on pork is always the best. And some smoked Gouda. Smoked Gouda in little small pieces will blend very nicely. And I'm gonna show you a trick so that we don't have to tie it. So as we actually roll the pork tenderloin, we're gonna tuck our goodies in. And there we have it. Here we have a beautiful pork tenderloin, all stuffed and ready to go. We're gonna put it on our root vegetables for 25 to 30 minutes in an oven that's been preheated to 425. And while I do that, Angela's gonna start on her tomatoes for her tartare.
Okay, so we're gonna start the preparation for the tomato and shallot tartare. First thing we're gonna do is take some tomatoes. Now, when you're choosing your tomato, we're at the end of the season, so tomatoes are getting a little slim. You want to choose a smaller tomato and a meatier tomato. So something like a plum or a Roma, which I have right here. We're going to cut them in half. And Carolyn, why don't you help me finish getting these into the pan
No
here?
problem.
So we've just got them cut in half, very simple, placed into a pan, face up or cut side up. And then will you help me with a little sprinkle of salt and pepper?
Sure, no problem.
All right, we always work best together in the kitchen anyway. So we've got a little drizzle of olive oil here too. Just gonna run that over there. You don't wanna be too excessive, but you want them each to have a nice little drizzle of olive oil on it. Okay, now that we have this, these are ready to go in the oven. They're gonna go in at 250 degrees for about 45 minutes. So when we come back, we'll get that in and then we'll finish off on the rest of the tartare. Things are starting to smell fantastic in the Life's a Feast kitchen. We've got our tomatoes that have roasted with thyme that are filling up the air with delicious smells. And talk about this pork that you have.
Oh my gosh, the pork tenderloin is smelling so fantastic with the culmination of bacon, ground mustard, the sauteed spinach, and the smoked Gouda that are now being infused with the root vegetables. We are really smelling something fantastic, and I cannot wait. Unfortunately, after I take it out of the oven, I'm gonna have to wait for 10 more minutes because we have to let our meat rest.
I'd love a piece of it right now, but since I can't, I'm gonna talk about my tomatoes. But while we do that, Carolyn, could you stir this sauce for me?
I'd be more
We've
than
got a
happy to.
sauce started here for our tartare, and it's a little 2-part sugar, 1-part water sauce that Carolyn is starting to break down here for us. And then while you're doing that, could you throw a little butter in there for me?
Sure, butter,
We're gonna
bigger
add
the
a
butter.
half a stick of butter. Don't argue with the French. Butter is your friend. Half a stick of butter, and then we're also gonna put in some balsamic vinegar. And when you do that, just remember that oil and water concept. When you put the balsamic butter in, it may start to spit a little bit. So just keep a safe distance. Don't get hit with burning liquid. Never fun. All right, while she's doing that, I've got my tomatoes roasted again that I talked about. When I'd mentioned earlier that we want to have a nice firm tomato, this is the reason why. Because you can see they're nice and soft, but they still have a nice firmness to them. They have a really nice texture, which is going to help when we put them into our ramekin before we bake them. Otherwise, we'll have a tomato mush and shallot tartare. Well, that's just not as appealing. So we've got those, and I've sauteed down my shallots here as well. We blanched them off in some hot water for about 30 seconds, let them cool, then we just cut off the ends and the skins slide right off. We cut those down so that they're gonna fit nicely. You don't wanna have to jam things into the ramekin. You want everything to fit nicely. So we cut those down and we saute them in a little olive oil for about 15 to 20 minutes. As they start to get golden, we're gonna put some fresh rosemary in and some seasoning, salt and pepper, just to give it a really nice aromatic touch, and it really matches nicely with the thyme. Now the step after this, since you've got my sauce going so fantastic, is to put them together and get the pastry puff on there.
Not before I take a taste of the sauce, or you do.
Ooh, okay. Don't have to fight me. Oh my gosh. Okay. That is amazing. Oh, it's gonna taste so good with the roasted tomatoes, and it's got the sweetness and the earthiness and coming from the shallot. Oh, and the puff pastry. Yay.
I know, I have to get
Okay.
on those puffed pastries.
Go puff. All right, Carolyn's gonna go put the finishing touches on the ramekins that we already have filled over there. And I'm gonna walk you through a little bit of putting them together here for you. Okay, so we take our tomato, put your nice little tomato in there, and then you take your shallot. And you know, since I have a little extra tomato, we're gonna make this nice and lush, and because, well, we really like our guests and we want them to really enjoy our first official Life's a Feast dinner party. So we're going to sort of layer in the tomato and shallot. Whoop, runaway shallot. Okay, we put that on there. I'm gonna make sure my sauce isn't getting too hot here. So, we love aprons. This is what they're good for. Okay, so Carolyn has already cut out some of the puff pastry for me. Listen, if you feel like making puff pastry from scratch, go for it. have a field day. I myself am much more of a cooker than a baker. So I just buy the pre-made stuff. You get it in the freezer section, it's fantastic, it works beautifully. And for me, you can make magic, and we always say working harder or working smarter, not harder. Now, we've got it cut. We cut the little pastry sheets into small enough. We've got the ramekin, and you want it to just be a little larger than the ramekin itself. Okay, so then we take them, and you don't want to put it on the outside, and this is what makes it a tartare. You're going to take it and stuff the edges in. Now you can see it can get a little bit tricky. Don't worry about it. If you have sausage fingers, it's not going to be a problem. Sometimes I feel like my fingers are a little too big to get into little crevices. This is where you take a spoon. It's got the tiny little edge here, and we can kind of just feed it in. And what this puff pastry is going to do as it bakes, it's going to make a little cup. And so when we pull these little beauties out of the oven, they are going to cool, and we're going to flip them over, and it's going to have a little pastry cup for us. All right, so we've got that one going. Carolyn, are you almost done there?
I'm done.
Fantastic. So Carolyn is going to put these in the oven. I've got this one finished off here. And then I believe we have some guests that are starting to arrive. I'm getting excited for our first dinner party here.
I can't even believe it. I'm so excited.
So we've got this amazing food, and what are we going to have to drink with it?
We're going to actually sample 2 wonderful Pinot Noirs. And what I like best is that not all Pinot Noirs have to cost you a fortune. So today, we are going to concentrate on what is great on your palate and easy on your wallet. I can't wait to see you.
So bring your appetite. So our guests have all arrived, and we are ready for our first Life's a Feast dinner party. I'm so excited. So we're putting the final touches together. We have the gorgeous stuffed pork tenderloin on a bed of root vegetables. And we're just going to put a little bit of a finishing sauce on here, drizzled around. And then, my personal favorite, the beautiful tarte tatin that we made. Okay, so we run a little knife inside the lining of that. Invert your plate. Give a little shake. And look at this. Absolute beauty. Now we take a nice hunk of goat cheese. You can do less if you want, but why? All right, now that gorgeous sauce that we made, I've got that right here. We're going to take this sauce, make a nice little drizzle right over it, garnish it with a beautiful basil leaf, adds a nice little flavor, and let's get this party started.
Oh my gosh, smell the luscious flavors of the stuffed pork tenderloin and the root vegetables with the small butter sauce. Now I know that all the Pinot Noir is grown for most of the Burgundy region in France, but California grows some spectacular Pinot Noir grapes. It happens to be one of the finniest grapes actually grown, and also even harder to try and make. From field to barrel, it can be the best wine that you've absolutely ever made, or it can be the absolute worst wine that you've ever made. 2 different things. Pinots can range from anywhere from $10 all the way up to $150 and more. But I really like to keep it down low, especially with the bread and butter. Now I've poured the bread and butter for everybody, and this is actually a special little wine because it's grapes that are sourced throughout the state of California, and the bread and butter gets to blend it together. And if you raise up, you can see this actually, it's sort of kind of a garnet color that comes down. Smell it, you're gonna get a really nice strawberry and apple, which is gonna go really nice because everybody likes pork chops and applesauce. Well, there's nothing different than a tenderloin and a little bit of an apple layer of flavor in the wine. Delicious. The next one is the Murphy Goud. And actually, the Murphy Goud has a different story. They happen to be a very old and established winery in California. And as their label says, this is like a cover of your favorite old song. This is the first wine that actually they've produced, the Pinot Noir, that's been the best in 15 years. This is actually going to be a little different from the bread and butter. It's not going to be so appley or have the berries to it. This is going to be a little bit more earthy. It's going to have some spice and a good tannin to it, and this is going to actually play really, really well with Angela's tomato tartan. If you'll notice, there is actually two different colors in the wine. Here we go. One's going to be a little darker, one's going to be a little bit lighter. Let's try the Murphy Good. Oh my gosh, a little bit of spice right up front, a little bit of fruit. It's going to play right into that balsamic vinegar, and then also it's going to play right into the pork tenderloin. I'm so happy that we're going to be able to share this feast with you.
So we have everyone at the table, and everyone is ready to eat. So let's enjoy, everyone. I have to tell you, you were not kidding with the Murphy Goody. That was fantastic. So I'd like to take this moment to thank you for joining us for our first Life's a Feast dinner party. And when it comes to life, bring your heart, bring your soul, bring your passion, and bring your appetite.